It's a beautiful day. Hi, you're welcome again to our series, Effective Communication, a Marital Serenity Tool. Today we shall be looking at the tips to attain serenity in your marriage communication, in your marriage. A healthy marital relationship can only be built on the basis of effective communication in marriage. When couples talk about their problems and they share their dreams, hopes, fear, and even vacation plans, the bond between them deepens. You become more accommodating and understanding of the other person. When you both make effective communication a priority and minimize communication barriers, then your marriage will definitely grow. Effective communication may seem difficult to master, but with practice and the right intention, you would succeed. And you find out that your marriage begins to thrive, rooted in oneness instead of division. It is not difficult as it sounds, but yes, it is difficult. With practice, you perfect it. And everything what's doing in this life is what doing well. There is no one size fits all approach to communication that will work for every couple. You just need to identify the effective approach that works for you. But there are some tips that can help you to communicate better in order to move through conflict or in order to have a sustainable marriage with your spouse. And sometimes people tend to avoid this, but it is not the best thing to do. With mastery, with practice, you become better and you become a master at it. It begins from the heart. And when the intention of the heart is faulty, you cannot communicate effectively. But when the intention of the heart is right, then effective communication can take place. So you need to evaluate what is your motive for embarking on that conversation with your spouse. What do you desire? What is your goal? So some of the tips that I want you to take away today for effective communication in order to have serenity in your marriage is that you need to learn how not to try to persuade by increasing your word counts. So the fact that you want to make something clear to your spouse does not mean that you should increase the number of words or the number of things you have to say. The fact that you need clarification from your spouse does not mean you need to make your spouse talk and explain endlessly. This is an endless cycle. As you keep repeating the same words, the same complaint, the same arguments over and over without seeking solution. Even if this yields any solution, even if you arrive at any agreement with this method, it comes as a result of exhaustion. And this defeat, it comes as a result of exhaustion and defeat rather than true agreement. And this type of solution usually do not last. The second tip I want you to take away is that do not be quick to speak. Try to understand. Do not always seek to be understood. Do not try to force your idea into your spouse. It is so tempting to speak without thinking things through. Often, this arises from making assumptions about what is being said, or you have a conclusion of what you want to hear, what you expect from your partner, rather than asking clear questions in order to gain clarifications. The third tip that you need to take away is do not use the phrase, "I told you." Do not use the phrase, "That is what you always do." Do not generalize. Do not make your spouse feel guilty or lesser as a person simply because you have said that thing in time pass. Do not pour vinegar into an open wound. That's simply what this is. So I told you so. It keeps your spouse at the receiving end. And when one is at the receiving end, the person does not, certainly this person cannot feel good. So talk out things with your spouse and avoid those phrases. Take out all those vocabularies during your communication. The fourth tip that will do you good is to learn to focus on the opinion. Do not always seek to focus on your own opinion. So remember, I said focus on the opinion of the conversation, not your own opinion. Don't shove your opinion down your spouse's throat. Instead, you can explain by giving reasons, advantages and disadvantages, why you think your opinion is right. Communicate about sharing, about exchanging of ideas and opinions. That's what communication is. Forcing your own opinion is one-sided and is narrow-minded, and this cannot lead to effective communication. The other thing I want you to take away, the other tip, is do not speak rashly. Speaking rashly literally means speaking without carefully considering the consequences of what you're saying. Our words are powerful. Words have lasting consequences. Try to speak in a calm and affectionate way, even when you are angry. Try to speak in a calm and affectionate way, even when your spouse have offended you, because two wrongs cannot make it right. At the very least, aim for civil and caring way of speaking instead of speaking rashly. Your spouse is not your opponent that you have to win or you have to prove a point to. It's not your spouse that you need to win over in order to prove your point. It is important to always keep this in mind. Another tip that will be very beneficial is do not speak harshly. The other says rashly. This says do not speak harshly. The words we choose to speak are very important, and it is good to choose them wisely. So you might claim to be in the right because you don't speak rashly, whereas your words are harsh. So it's important as spouse to take note of these two. Speaking harshly includes yelling. It includes unnecessary argumentation. You need to keep your voice in check even when correcting your spouse. You need to keep your volume, your tone in check. Do not use sarcasm either. Don't make your partner feel or look stupid simply because you want to communicate. Your words can bring healing, and at the same time, it can pierce the soul like a sword. So the question is, which do you desire as a spouse? You ask yourself if what you are about to say will help send the message you intend to send. And then, would it further discussion or it will end the discussion? Or if what you are trying to say will cause hurt or inflammation. If your answers to the letter of this question is no, then you might want to change what you want to say or take a pause in order to calm down. Another tip is that you should learn to listen. Hearing and listening are two different things. They are not the same. The first tip to improving communication is to listen to your spouse when your spouse is speaking. Learn to listen. Be attentive to the thoughts, the feelings expressed, both through verbal and non-verbal communication. When you find yourself responding too quickly, or you find yourself planning what to say next, then you are not listening. Listening involves activeness. When you listen actively, then it improves your communication. When you listen actively, then you are more open and understanding to what your spouse is saying, and you tend to empathize more. So it is good to always listen, but also you need to learn to be patient. So listening does not only help you to understand what your partner is saying, it does not only help you to empathize with your partner, it also grooms you on how to exercise patience, even with others around you. Another tip that is very beneficial is to set up a time-out system, because we are human, so sometimes our emotions can run high. It is good that during communication, especially if it is during a conflict, to set a time-out system. A time-out system simply means that time when you have both agreed to take a pause. So when communicating with your spouse, for instance, and the discussion is getting heated, the discussion does not have an ending. You keep debating until you reach that point where you want to explode or fight. Then it is advisable that when having such conversation, you agree on short time out when you take a pause. You agree on a word or even a short phrase that you can say to indicate that you need a break. So you can say something like stop. You can say something like break. You can say something like time out. You can say something like cool off, If you are at the verge of yelling or saying hurtful words, simply use your timeout phrase and take a break in order to calm down. Another great tip is to ask if it is really needed. That thing you want to say, is it necessary? You need to ask yourself. So honesty and openness are vital in marriage and in any relationship. But that does not mean that you can say anything that comes to your mind. Discretion is key in effective communication. If what you want to say is born out of frustration, anger, or just wanting to lash out or lash back at your spouse, then you might want to evaluate it. There are other ways of getting things out without being so harsh. Or when you are angry, there are other ways of letting it out. And a therapist would be a good guide in doing this. We cannot cover that in this series. Another wonderful tip is to show empathy. Show empathy during your communication with your spouse. Try to put yourself in your partner's shoe. Think about what you're saying and ask the impact it makes on your partner. How does your partner feel about this? Of course, the best thing or the best person to find out from is your partner. But it is always helpful to imagine yourself in your partner's shoe. So that thing you're saying, if given back to you, are you able to receive it? Are you able to accommodate it? Will you take it with a smile? This is empathy, putting yourself in the other person's shoe. Try to imagine what it will feel like to be in that situation. Developing empathy will help you to communicate effectively. It helps you communicate better for the rest of your marriage years. You can follow up with questions instead of lashing out. You can ask, how does that make you feel? Or, what can I do to resolve this situation for you? So respect your spouse's perspective, even during a conflict. Even when you cannot understand, it is still very important to respect the viewpoint of your spouse, because your spouse definitely might have a reason why he or she thinks the way he or she does. So the healthy thing for you is to ask questions rather than lash out without empathy. With this, we come to the end of this series. It will be a very good thing to go and look at these tips. We'll visit some more tips tomorrow, but until I come your way again tomorrow, I remain your Serenity Coach, Chineye Nwobi. Thank you.